Okay, so today we're going to talk about a vulnerable population of same-sex attraction and the LGBT community and health concerns that we have with them. So some history about this community is most historians believe that homosexual activity has been present in almost every documented culture that we've ever had throughout time. It was completely normal in most cultures. There's been a lot of contention throughout history about homosexuality. In Greece, it was widely accepted until the Romans came through and they actually killed almost everyone with any association with the same sex. In early American, when the conquerors came through, they were very surprised to find women living with women and men living with men. We have documented history of same-sex attraction in Afghanistan and even Kenya. So the accounts we do have, though, are very biased because usually they were written by missionaries or people who believed that these practices were savage. In the United States, being homosexual was still actually even considered a mental illness until the mid-1900s. In the 20th century, in the late 20th century, we were able to watch people come out on live TV, the most notable being Ellen DeGeneres. And since the 21st century, we've been able to see multiple TV programs that address these common homosexual themes. And actually, finally, in 2015, the United States finally recognized same-sex marriage. Today, homosexuals are more widely accepted, and there are a lot of advocacy groups, but they still face challenges on the daily. In the United States, there are roughly 9 million people nationwide who identify as homosexual or bisexual. That's about 4.5% of our population, and also the same number of the population as New Jersey. In Utah, we have about just over 82,000 people. That is 3.7% of our population. So we are almost a whole percent below the national average. There's probably a lot of things that can contribute to that. One, our culture. We are a very religious culture. And so being that, we probably have less people. Two, social norms. Our population could be a lot higher, but people are not identifying as part of the LGBTQ population, as well as a lack of resources. Utah is one of the states that have the lowest amount of resources for this population, and so people could just not be expressing themselves as part of the LGBTQ population. So with the social determinants of health, these are the ones that they're at risk for. So one is the availability of resources, In Utah, we have a lot of providers that could be not as good at taking care of this population. This population might not be able to know where to go. They might not see providers or healthcare workers that are of the same population for them. So that is an issue with the availability of resources. Public safety is another social determinant of health. There's still a lot of people who are homosexual and part of the LGBTQ population that are worried about their safety. They're worried about possibly getting beat up or not being taken care of, or in the healthcare, they're worried about getting the care that they need to. Social support is another huge one. Because of our culture in Utah, they might feel like they don't have that social support. They don't know where to go to get healthcare. They don't know who to go to, and the people they might be going to don't understand or also are having those issues. This one goes right along with the social norms and attitudes. When we don't feel like we fit in with the social norms, it's hard to go out and seek healthcare. It's hard to go and talk to providers about things that they might not think are normal, even though that is normal for us. All of these social determinants are a reason why this population is vulnerable. With the Maslow hierarchy of needs, there's 5 levels. This population could be at risk for not meeting most of those levels, but I'm hopeful that the mass majority at least meets the basic need. Now, there have been studies that have shown that people who are part of the LGBTQ population do have a higher rate of homelessness. And so that could be that they're not meeting the first one. But I think definitely the second one is one that we get worried about. Again, they feel like they don't belong. They feel like they might not fit into the regular social norm. And also with the safety, they could feel like they could be hurt or beat up, or like we had talked about before. The love, esteem, and self-actualization, those are all combined together. If you're not meeting the safety, you're not going to meet the 3 upper ones. And if you're not meeting love and belonging, you're not going to meet the 2 upper ones. This directly affects self-esteem, confidence, their relationships. They could be on the outs with their family because their family doesn't understand, so their families abandoned them. Friends could have abandoned them. They could have teachers or coworkers that are prejudiced against them, and so they're not able to meet any of those levels. This is a huge issue with our LGBTQ population, and this is why having advocates and having support groups is so important, so that this population can see that there are plenty of other people just like them. With health concerns, all of these health concerns, they are at a higher risk for. Some of the communicable diseases that are huge are gonorrhea, chlamydia, and HIV. These are actually twice as likely, as high, in our LGBTQ youth as our non-LGBTQ youth. Some of those reasons are because they have an increased number of anonymous sexual partners. They also have a lack of testing. So HIV is not as commonly tested for. STDs are becoming more commonly tested for, but especially in our youth, those are not tested, especially in the state of Utah. And then there's just a lack of education. There is a lack of sexual education, even in our heterosexual couples, but especially with our homosexual couples. Some of the non-communicable diseases that they are at risk for are cancers, cardiovascular diseases, and obesity. The reason that they're ahead of these is mostly because of the social aspects of them. Usually they could feel isolated, or they could not know how to cope with their feelings, and so obesity is a huge one. Cancer and cardiovascular disease, again, come from the lack of healthcare. When they feel like they aren't getting heard from their healthcare providers, they stop going to their healthcare providers, and so they do get those. Psychologically, we have a lot. Rejection, anxiety, depression, all of those are psychological, and our LGBTQ population suffers greatly from those. Again, going back to Maslow hierarchy of needs, they don't feel like they belong in society, their self-esteem suffers, they don't have people to turn to, and those are what happen. Our substance abuse and our suicide rates are very, very high. They did a research where they showed that this population has significant greater amounts of depression, anxiety, and suicidal thoughts than just the regular population. Again, this goes back to them not feeling part of our population. There was another study that said that developing healthy relationships is a lot harder in this population because of the understanding from friends, family, and even sexual partners. And so not having that relationship can be very detrimental to their health. This population is very vulnerable when it comes to health, and we've made great strides in the last decade and in the last century, but there is a lot more to do. Thank you for watching my presentation.